icon today. Let's go ahead and tap statistics. We've got data sets in here. Put these data sets in. The way you do that is just go to the place you want to enter your point or your data. I'm going to go and add one more data point. Let's add the last data point. We'll add the point 8. On the other side, we'll add a -1. And finally, we're going to use list 3 from time to time as a frequency. Let's say we have that number showing up 3 times. Any one of these can be used as a frequency list, or you can use frequencies of 1. We'll talk about those in a second. We can go into Edit, see what we can do. Open list, close lists. We can jump from the top to the bottom. You can sort your list, ascending or descending. Delete cells, rows, and columns. You can insert cells. You can cut, copy, paste, select all, and clear all. We can calculate 1 variable statistics, 2 variable statistics, different regressions. Escape out. Different kinds of tests, intervals, distributions, inverse distributions, and display statistics. Set up different graphs. Different graphs we can have set up. We can have up to 9 set up at once, including previous regressions, graph different functions, and the diamond is to set an automatic window for statistics. If you want to have your window set up automatically, the calculator will look at your data set and decide what the best window is, or you can turn that off and make that decision yourself. That's right underneath the diamond there. So let's go ahead and look at what else we can do. The icons underneath are graph, our y equals editor. That's the main window. You notice the icons look the same. That's your graph editor. You can change from exact to decimal approximations, set up graphs, set up your window, and you can display different lists. So right now if I tap this icon, you'll see 4 lists. If I tap it again, you'll see 2. If I tap it again, you see 3. We also have more options. Insert cells, delete cells, arrange alphabetically, so we'll just go back. Let's take a look at a graph first. So let's tap the graph icon. I like using the graph icons. They're easier to find and pretty quick to just go ahead and tap. Now let's see what kind we can make. We can make a scatter plot, XY line, normal probability plot, histogram, median box plot. Each one of those has different options. So let's go ahead and set up our histogram. We're going to go with a histogram coming out of list 1. You got lots of different lists you can choose from. And using the frequency, either the number 1 or one of your frequency lists. So you can use frequency of list 2. That one has a negative value in it, so that one may give you an error. List 3 we could use as frequencies, and we'll come back and give that one a try. For right now, we'll just leave it at 1. We'll set it. Now that it's all set up and ready to go, you have to be able to see it. In order to see it, you tap the graph. Oh, it looks like I forgot to select. Ah, there we go. I forgot to select on. I got that error, so I got to make sure that's turned on. We'll go ahead and set it. Now that it's turned on and it's ready to go, let's go ahead and tap that graph. It's going to say it's going to start at 1. Let's start at 0 so we can see a little bit of the axes. And the H step, the horizontal step, we're going to make it steps of 1, so each one of these gets its own bin, its own category, sometimes known as bin width. We'll tap OK. Here we have just our regular old bins. We have 1 bin for every one. It's got a height of 1 because we're using a frequency of 1 for each one of those. Not very exciting, not very thrilling, so let's change it. Tap the graph icon. Let's change the frequency to list number 3. List number 2, like I said, has a 0 in it, so it doesn't make sense to have a frequency of -1. We could take a look at that and see what happens. But for now, we'll let list 1 and list 3, so we'll set that. Again, we want to see something to the left, so we want to see 0, and we're going to make that frequency the bin width of 1. We'll tap OK. Now we have category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with different heights, each one being slightly different. And we're using list 3 as our heights, so 1 shows up 2 times, 3 times, etc. If you would like, you're on the bottom here. We can go ahead and do some analysis or tracing. Go ahead and analyze. Some analysis will trace. It's going to trace through each one of these. So as we tap across, you will see it's stat graph 1. Its x is 1 with a frequency of 2. And you can just tap across or come back the other way. I'm going to tap on the upper part of the screen. That will deselect the bottom. You notice again, we've got the highlight around that. Let's see what happens when we have a frequency of -1. Frequency list 2. See if that causes any problems. Again, we want to start at 0. And we want to go with bin widths of 1. Okay there. There we have a frequency of -1, so that's okay. Let's make a new type of graph. Again, let's tap up top. Select a new graph. We're going to make a scatter plot. From list 1 and list 2, we'll use a frequency of 1 to begin with. Marks, we can choose squares, crosses, large dots, or small dots. We're going to go ahead and use a square. We'll set that and tap. And there we have our scatter plot ready to go right there. Once you have the scatter plot, you can do analysis like we did earlier. We can calculate a regression. That looks like linear data to me, so if you tap linear regression, you get the same options we had before. X list is coming from list 1, Y list is list 2, frequency is 1. We want to copy the formula into Y1 and copy the residuals into list number 4. You can also choose to leave those off. We'll tap OK. Here's my regression equation. A, B, R squared, mean squared error. If you don't like the AX plus B, you can choose A plus BX. It'll go ahead and change that. Tap OK. There's your regression equation. And again, from here, you can go ahead and do some tracing, sketching, modifying, etc. You've got some great options to go from there. You can also choose to do a different regression equation here. Let's try doing a quadratic regression from list 1, list 2. Again, we'll copy the formula in Y1, copy the residuals in list 4. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Again, we'll tap OK to see that. Let's take a look at the residuals. There it is. If we wanted to look at the residual plot of this data, we can go ahead and set up a new plot. We're going to turn plot 1 and plot 2 on. It'll be a scatter plot with my residuals, which are in list 4. This time, instead of using the squares, we're going to use the crosses so we can tell the difference. We'll go ahead and graph those two now. Now you've got the crosses. These are your residuals. This is the actual, and the difference between the actual and predicted are underneath. So it's a nice way to sandwich your two together. You have the different colors. You've got the graph. You've got the residuals coming up. You got everything you need, basically. Tap again up top. Let's make a new kind of graph. XY line. This is going to be a connected scatter plot. Go ahead and tap the graph. We still got our equation coming up, so let's turn off the equation. We'll go up here to set. We're going to turn off the previous regression. We're going to turn off our second graph, which is our residuals. Go ahead and hit tap that graph again, and now we have the graph that we want. This is an XY connected scatter plot, sometimes you call it. Let's explore a couple more graphs here. Normal probability plot coming out of list 1. Let's go with list number 2. We're going to make the squares, so we set that and we graph it. There you have your normal probability plot. Plots your X position versus Z score. Tap above. Let's take a look at some more. Histogram we've seen. Median box plots are really nice. Let's show the outliers this time. We'll say yes, and we'll set it, and there you have it. If there were outliers, they would show up as not connected. Think you get the idea? Let's try something different. Let's go with some statistical tests. Remember where to find those? We go to calculate. Let's calculate a test. We have a choice of tests. t-tests, intervals, distributions, or inverses. We're going to go ahead with a test. A 1 sample z, 1 sample t, 2 sample z's, 2 sample t's, proportions. You name the test. It's all based on your data. So we can do this all based on data. Let's do a linear regression t-test. You can turn the help on, and the help will give you some information about each one of these. When you tap on the test, it'll tell you what kind of test you're looking at. Let's select a 1 sample t-test. Gives you information about the 1 sample t-test. This is going based on the list, or we could also tap on the variable and use variable. So if we know the mean and standard deviation and what our scores are, we can go ahead and type those in. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and use the list. Let's use the list. We'll tap next. Notice we still have the information. The help is going to be very helpful here. We're looking at a condition of not equal to. We're going to say that our mean in this case is going to be 0. Not really sure what it is. Our list, we're going to use list 1. Frequency, we're going to use list 3. We scroll down a little there, but there we have it. Again, every time you enter a new data field, the information at the bottom, the help will give you some information about that. So we'll go ahead and hit next. Here's your information. Not equal to 0 has a t-value. This is the probability. Your mean from your information, standard deviation from the list, how many things were we looking at. If you tap the graph, now you're going to get the normal curve with that information plotted right on there. If we had gotten something that has shaded area, we would have seen the shaded area. Again, if we tap help, it tells us a little bit about each one of these. The t-value, the p-value, sample mean, and number of the sample size. And again, we can go ahead and graph that again. Let's go back. We'll go back again. Let's try another test, we'll do a test for 2 samples. 2 sample mean, 2 sample t-test. Again, going based on the lists. We'll leave the help turned off this time. Let's go with less than. List 1 versus list number 2. Frequencies for each we'll just use as 1. We could have chosen different frequency lists. Pooled versus unpooled. We're going to leave the pooled off. We're not really sure the data, where the data is coming from. There's your t for mu1 being less than mu2, probability, your p-value. Your degrees of freedom calculated by the calculator. X bar 1, X bar 2, standard deviation 1 and 2, sample size for each one of those. Again, once we tap graph, we'll get that information graphed right on the screen. So now we have a visual representation of the same thing we just calculated down below, which is what is the probability of seeing a score this extreme or less if mu1 is less than mu2. It will graph your t, your p-value, and it gives you the curve. Let's calculate an interval. So we want to take, instead of a test, we'll do an interval. We'll do a 2 sample t interval. 2 sample t interval. Again, if we have help on, you can get some information. We'll go next. Confidence level, we're going to go 0.95, 95% confidence level. List 1, list 2, pooled off. Go ahead and hit next. There's your interval. Upper and lower values, degrees of freedom, all the information you needed. We go back. Distributions, normal PDF, normal CDF, student T, that's PDF and a CDF for each one of those. We've got some advanced ones, including Poisson, geometric, and hypergeometric. The F distribution as well. There's the binomial. Inverse distributions, inverse normal calculation, inverse T, inverse chi-squared, inverse F, inverse binomial, inverse Poisson, inverse geometric, and inverse hypergeometric. Some of those I've never seen before on calculator, so it's nice to see you have those options available. Let's do an inverse norm. Let's say we're doing the center. Let's go to the left. Let's go left area. So we're going to go left tail area with a probability of 0.25, a mean of 0, and a standard deviation of 1. Go ahead and tap next. Again, we have the option of viewing this on the graph. It shows you where that's at. We're looking at the left area. Had a probability of 0.25, so you're looking at 25% of the area to the left of this point, which happens to be negative 0.67449, standard deviation of 1, mean of 0. Let's do the inverse binomial. Pull up our inverse binomial. We'll go next. The probability value. So what we're looking for is what is the area of that probability that we want to find. We want to find the point at which 25% of the area out of 15 trials, and the probability of success is 30%. So you're looking for what is that inverse curve. So we'll go ahead and tap next, and it takes 3 successes out of 15 trials to give me a probability of 0.25 when the probability of a success is 30%. There's a little bit of the information there for you. Those all work the same way. Those work on those templates. Inverse norm, inverse t. Probability, what's the probability we're looking for? We're looking at a 0.51. Degrees of freedom, we'll say that we have 9 degrees of freedom. And we go ahead and hit next. And it gives us our information. Let's go back. Let's close that out. We haven't used the swap key yet. Let's go ahead and hit swap. Swap will change top to bottom. And we'll highlight the top and we'll resize the top. You could have also resized the bottom. We can change the name of the lists also. If you highlight the list, come down below, you can go ahead and change that using our keyboard. And we'll go ahead and execute, and it changed that name. We'll put away the keyboard. So there you have it. So those are just some basics on the statistics menu. Check out our next video, which is going to be looking at the spreadsheet. How can we use the spreadsheet similar to how we use statistics, but spreadsheets will give us a whole lot more power and a lot more options to be able to do some great things. So check out our spreadsheet tutorial that's coming up. Don't forget to check out our other great videos on the Casio ClassPad 400. We're here for all your Casio needs.